If you've ever watched reseller videos and wondered where these people find everything, this is it. Because today we're headed into the Goodwill Outlet, better known as the bins. Clothing is dumped into giant blue bins. People dig through it for hours, and everything is sold by the pound. It looks completely chaotic, and honestly, the first time I walked in, I almost turned around and hightailed it out of there. But over the years, I've found everything from everyday bread and butter inventory to items worth over $100, even as much as $250. I've actually made over $100,000 doing this. By the way, my name is Lee, and today I'm going to show you exactly how the bins work, the mistakes that beginners make, and some of the items that I found on this trip, including an item that had been sitting in a bin for hours, untouched, and comping out for around $125. Let's head inside. Now, before we start digging, it's important to understand how items end up here. A lot of people assume that everything at the bins came from a regular Goodwill store and has already been picked over. Now, some of it has, but that's only part of the story. Items generally end up here in three different ways. First, some items were sent to a retail store, they didn't sell, and they eventually made their way here. Those are the items that will still have their original Goodwill tags on them. Second, some items were processed by Goodwill but were judged not worthy to be sent to the retail store. And honestly, they're wrong quite a few times. I found plenty of valuable items that never should have ended up here. Third, sometimes Goodwill simply doesn't have the time or the manpower to be able to process everything that gets donated. You might see things like unopened garbage bags, you might see sealed boxes, and you might literally be opening donations that nobody has sorted through yet. And that's what makes shopping the bins so interesting, because you never really know what it is that you're gonna find. One little thing that you'll notice if you're sourcing clothing, a lot of items that came from retail stores still have their Goodwill tags attached. Now, I usually pull those off while I'm sourcing, not because it matters for resale. The store doesn't need those for me to be able to check out, but because if I don't, what I found is that I end up finding all of those tags later all over my house. But you can find profitable items no matter how they ended up here. Here's just a few examples. This gunny sack dress. I have found these on numerous occasions, and these make a really super easy $100 flip. This one, not even the best of pictures, barely got it listed, $100 in my pocket. And I'm always able to leave with a lot of bread and butter items in the $20 to $40 range. This is a men's button-up shirt from the brand Cabela's, sold on Poshmark for $35. And I seem to come across snow pants quite often from various different brands. You might have different types of profitable items in your area depending on your climate. But I picked these up, sold them for anywhere from $50 to $150. And every once in a while, you'll come across a super profitable item over the $100 mark, or closer to $200 as in this case. And this is a vintage women's Orvis jacket. Absolutely beautiful, went on Poshmark for $167, found in the bins, left by all of those other resellers. And this is what I would call a sleeper item that's super easy to miss. These are cargo shorts from the brand American Eagle. And these are selling really well for whatever reason, especially if they're from the Y2K era, which technically makes them vintage. These sold on Poshmark for $42. Picked up in the bins for just a couple of bucks. And one of my favorite things to come across at the bins are bras. And because they don't weigh very much at all, you're usually paying less than $1 for these. This happened to be an older discontinued style from Victoria's Secret that's really in demand. Picked it up, I think I sold it the same exact day for $70. And some of the items are sometimes things that maybe other people don't want to deal with, like this wedding dress. Now, I did have to sit on this for a fair amount of time, but it did end up selling overseas to Spain for $147, plus the buyer paid that international shipping. And this is a really great example where it pays to really know what's trending right now. That's actually one of the biggest things that we focus on inside of my Empowered Reseller membership, keeping up to date with all of the items that buyers are actually after. This is a pair of jeans from the low value brand Mud, but because of the era of the item and that flare leg, they also have a lace up waist. These sold for full asking price, $90 plus shipping. Now, one of the things that I've noticed about bin shoppers is they get super excited when it's a brand that they recognize. For example, Lululemon, even though that item might only be worth $10, and they're missing out on so many other items like this Arizona jeans
men's jacket. This one I thought it was so cool with that contrasting sleeve. Picked it up, sold it on Poshmark for 55 bucks.
Now, before your first trip, there's a few things that I wish somebody had told me because I literally had no idea what to expect the first time I headed into one of these places. First up, use the bathroom before you go. Not every location has a public bathroom. If they do, you might not want to use it. Bring hand sanitizer and leave as much stuff in your car as possible. I've seen people lose phones in the bins. I've seen people lose their purses in the bins. I've seen people set things down and then completely forget where they left them. They're running around in panic mode trying to figure out where their thing is. And the less that you're carrying, the easier the day is gonna go. And this is where something like a waist pack, or what we used to call a fanny pack back in the day, can work really well to be able to keep your essentials on you. Another thing to know is that not every location has shopping carts available. Now, some stores do have a ton, but other stores, it can be super competitive when it comes to carts. There will be people lined up before the store even opens. They'll grab the carts. If you're there 2 minutes late, all of the carts will be gone. And in some locations, people do bring their own folding carts or pull behind wagons because they don't want to risk not getting one. So if you're making a special trip, that's something worth checking out ahead of time. Now, most locations work pretty similarly. When employees are ready to bring out fresh bins, they'll block off an aisle. Everyone has to step back. The aisle's closed. And once those bins are brought out, the employees will give the all clear. They'll pull down the barriers and say, walk, don't run. And people start heading towards the new bins. And yes, it can get competitive. It can get pushy. But here's something I wish that more people understood. Just because other resellers are there doesn't mean they're finding everything. In fact, they leave a ton of valuable items behind. I found so many valuable items over the years where people had already dug through them. Other resellers, items that had even been sitting there for hours. I found a dress that everybody thought was bed sheets, took it home, quick 70 bucks. Shoes everybody overlooked, quick 100 bucks. And items that really only became valuable because I knew what I was looking at. There's simply too much inventory for anyone to find everything. Now, one thing that I've learned after spending hundreds of hours of doing this is that finding inventory is really more than half of the battle. Being able to recognize value is the most important skill that you can have to be successful flipping items like these. And if you're still learning what brands to look for, I do have a free brand list that you can download using the link below. These are the exact brands that have led me to the $100,000 mark and beyond. Another thing that I've noticed about bin shoppers is they don't want to pay up for items. They're not willing to spend $5 on an item, even if that same item could make them 100 bucks. Why? I don't know. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is that you do not have to be pushy. You do not have to be aggressive to be successful here. Yes, some people do treat new bins like a competitive sport, but you don't need to shove. You don't need to argue. Be a nice human. There's no need for fighting inventory. And honestly, some of my best finds have simply come from being patient, allowing the professional resellers to move in and move out. I've even had other resellers hand me valuable items that they didn't want. I've had people point out things that they knew weren't a good fit for them. And like I've mentioned already, I found a ton of valuable items after everybody has already moved on, picked things over. They leave so much behind. And honestly, a lot of times, I don't even go to the fresh bins when they open up a new row. I'd rather avoid the chaos and keep sourcing. There's plenty enough inventory to go around.
And I could give so many examples of items that I found from not being pushy, digging to the bottoms. This is one of them, a Peruvian Connection sweater. Absolutely beautiful. Got it home, turned around, sold it for 100 bucks. Since you're paying by the pound, this cost me around $2 to pick up. By the way, finding good items is not about luck.
It's not luck.
I find $50 to $100+ items almost every single time that I go. This is a vintage 70s orange tab Levi's jacket, sold on Poshmark for 84 bucks, found in the bins. And guys, the professional resellers that move in and move out super quickly, they're leaving so much behind. I cannot stress this enough. And this is one of those items. This is a full body personal flotation device that all of the other resellers left behind. I don't know if they didn't want to pay the $5 for it or what, but I picked this up. It was at the max dollar amount that you pay for an item because it was a heavy item, but picked that up, sold it for 80 bucks on eBay. Armored riding jackets. These are another thing that I come across on occasion. and always love to grab them no matter the brand. This is a little bit lesser known brand than some of the more obvious ones, but it's still sold for 58 bucks on Poshmark. Now these are a little bit heavier, so they might end up costing you 2 or 3 bucks. But in my opinion, that's okay for that kind of ROI. Sometimes you hit a big jackpot. This is a jacket that I found. It was not in the best of condition. It was pretty dirty. I ended up taking it to the dry cleaner after I picked it up at the Goodwill Outlet for about 5 bucks. It was heavier item, and I did spend about $16 on the dry cleaning bill, but I turned around and sold this Filson jacket for $250 plus shipping. And the craziest part is that this item was pulled out of a bin that had just been sitting there for who knows how long. All of the shoppers had already left. I was the only one that took the time to dig deep and find this item. And the accessory bins are some of my favorite things to go through. Lots of examples that I could show here of $50 to $100 items. This one happens to be a vintage duffel bag from the brand High Sierra. It does have leather trim handles and leather accent pieces on it. Picked that up for a few bucks and sold that on eBay for 50. And while I'm primarily a clothing reseller, I do like to browse the hardline bins during my downtime. And this is a gaming keyboard that I came across, thought that's unique. I don't even know what it is. Went and looked up comps and ended up selling it almost immediately for 85 bucks plus shipping. And this was a total shocker to me. I know nothing about books, so all glory to God on this one for opening my eyes. Found this book that was a first edition signed. No idea what this book even is or who the author is, but picked it up, but saw that the comps were looking pretty good. Took a little bit of a gamble, but that ended up selling for almost 160 bucks plus shipping.
Now, one of my favorite tips is to pat pockets instead of reaching inside. You'll know if something's in there without blindly sticking your hand in. Now, a friend of mine did this who was sourcing right next to me. It was an old blazer, patted it, heard a crinkle, and inside, you would not believe what she found. There was an envelope filled with money, not $20, not $50, not $100, but $250 cash sitting in the pocket. Now that's definitely not normal, but it is fairly normal to find coins in the bin. But this is a good reminder to not blindly reach into things. I've seen broken items, I've seen sharp objects, I've seen people running down the aisle with a cut hand, blood dripping all over the floor, but most of the risk really comes from hard lines or hard goods rather than clothing, but still it's something that you're gonna wanna be aware of. You might also wanna consider sourcing with gloves or possibly a mask. Masks were a thing at the Goodwill outlets before COVID ever even hit. And some locations I've heard even require people that are shopping to wear gloves. Now let's talk strategy, because this is where most bins videos stop short. Now the goal is to not inspect every item. Look up every item. You'd be there all day. Instead, learn to scan quickly, feel for quality, feel for fabric, feel for quality construction. There's gonna be a lot of garbage. There's gonna be a lot of low value items that you're gonna have to sift through, and oftentimes the higher value, more quality items stand out from the sea of other things. And a lot of times you'll be able to feel that quality before you ever see a brand tag. Now, when something looks promising, it goes straight into my cart, even if I'm not completely sure. What I don't want to do is spend 5 minutes researching one item while opportunities are passing me by. So I'll set those potentially profitable items aside and then look them up later during downtime. One mistake that beginners make is only looking at the top layer. Don't do that. Some of my best finds have been buried underneath. You'll also want to check out the corners. Things can get hidden in the corners or sitting at the bottom of the bin that everyone else ignores. Now, before your first trip, let me explain the checkout, because this is one of the things that I was most nervous about. I had no idea what was going to happen when I went to go check out. Now, every location is a little bit different. Some will let you wheel your cart directly onto a large scale. Others have giant tubs where you're going to transfer your items for weighing. And some stores only allow certain carts on the scale because they already know the weight of those carts. Everything is going to get weighed because you are paying by the pound, and you're charged based on the category as well as the pricing structure for that location. Textiles might be one rate, and hard lines, aka hard goods, might be another. Some stores even cap the maximum cost of an item or give you a discount when you hit so many pounds, such as 50 pounds or 100 pounds. And this is where my IKEA bags come in, because they're lightweight, they're easy to organize, and they make checkout much faster. I've got my items already bagged up. I simply move my IKEA bag from my cart over to the scale. I don't worry about the little bit of extra weight that the bags add. Now, one question that I get all of the time is how long to stay. And honestly, it really depends. I've stopped in for 20 minutes and found profitable items. Essentially, I've never left empty handed, even when stopping for a few minutes. When my kids were younger, I might stop by for 30 minutes if I was happening to be driving past. But I really prefer to go once a week for a couple of hours, and then I'm able to leave with enough items for the week, maybe 40 to 50 items. And I also know of resellers who drive a couple of hours just to get to an outlet. It's that worth it. And when they're making that kind of trip, they'll often stay all day to be able to source enough inventory for an entire month. Neither approach is right or wrong, but it's really the one that's going to be able to fit your lifestyle the best. Personally, I'd rather spend a couple focused hours sourcing to be able to get back home. Another tip is bring water. I know that it sounds simple, but if you've been there for several hours, you're walking, you're bending over the bins, you're digging through, you're lifting, you're sorting, you're standing in line, you're moving carts, and it's a lot more physical than most people expect. You'll have your arm workout done for the day. And so have a bottle of water in your car for afterwards. Another trick is to use downtime wisely. And by downtime, I mean when things are slow and when you're maybe waiting for a new bin rotation. And this makes a good time to be able to look over your items. A lot of outlets do have horrible lighting, fluorescent lights, but most of them do have windows at least on one wall. So between rotations, I'll take items over to the window to that natural light. And this is a good place to check for things like stains, for pinholes, for any flaws that I might have missed. It's a simple habit, but it saved me from bringing home a lot of problem items. Every time someone says reselling is saturated, I wish that they could spend a day at the bins. The volume of stuff coming through these places is almost impossible to understand unless you've seen it for yourself. The truckloads that arrive constantly, the containers that are full, the new bins that keep rolling out all day, every day, even on weekends. The challenge isn't finding inventory, it's being able to recognize value, because while one person sees an old dress, another person sees a $70 sale. While one person sees a worn leather strap without a bag, another person sees $125. I can assure you of this, that opportunity is still here. You just have to learn what you're looking at. Now, if you'd like to see what it looks like of sourcing at a regular Goodwill retail store, then stick around for this next video. I'll show you exactly how I spot valuable finds and how I'm able to leave with a couple $100 of profit in just a few minutes nearly every single time I stop. Just click or tap your screen and I'll see you there.